Hey there, Tristan here from PSI. Well, let's go over an EJ255. It's quite windy outside, so sorry about the noise. But let's go over all the sensors, all the vacuum lines, all the coolant lines, just so we can understand this spaghetti mess. One of the reasons I've been wanting to create this kind of content is that a lot of what I've learned came from forums. And hopping back on there, it's quite obvious that it's a bit of a toxic place nowadays. It's not a nice place to ask questions or find answers. So I'm hoping to create a content that makes it probably won't be as easy to search, but it'll be a little bit nicer to find specific facts and information that you're looking for. So this might be a bit of a longer video, but it's one to go over all the sensors, all the vacuum lines, and everything. So let's dive into it. So let's make sense of the spaghetti. Let's start with the electrical. We'll start on the part closest to where the engine harness connects to the body harness, and then we'll work our way down through the sensors from there. All right, so here we are on the turbo side of the engine. This is where the harness connects to the body. We follow this up, and the first place, I'm gonna try and not make this a shaky video, but it's gonna be a little crazy. The first junction is this one right here, and it comes down. The main branch comes down and around, and it feeds 3 sensors, 2 spark coil packs, and your front O2 sensor. Coming back up, this line back here rubs around to your cam angle sensor, which is this little guy right here. These other 3 branches, this bottom one comes up to your AVCS control solenoid. The top 2, this first one, is for the first injector, and it's a little gray plug. Let me see if I can show you that. It's a bit hard to see down there. You can see this other one easier. This other branch comes over here and it feeds 2 connectors. One is the gray plug for the fuel injector, and the other one is a plug we're not using, but it's the plug for the TGV control solenoid, which would mount right here, but since there's TGV deletes, you can see the plug in there. This is no longer being used. That would throw a check engine light. Now we go back to the main branch. It comes up and over, and here is hard to see, but let's tackle these top 2 lines first. This one is part of that secondary air pump system. This is the multi-pin plug, and this specifically is your barometric pressure sensor. You want to keep this guy, your engine won't run right without this sensor. I'm just going to let him hang right there. This second wire here is part of your PVC system, positive crankcase, PCV, yeah, positive crankcase ventilation system, and that plugs in right here. I'll go over the vacuum plumbing in a second. There's another part of the wire loom that comes here, goes down, and cuts to the front of the engine. Let's go over there. So that comes out right about here, and this first leg is your crank angle sensor. So you've got cam angle sensors. Sorry, the wind is howling. This is your crank angle sensor. You've got these 2 connectors. This is your coolant temperature sensor back here, and this is for your oil pressure sensor, which would be right here, but we've relocated it to the back. I'll show you in a second. You just run an extension from this plug to the top of that oil pressure sensor, and I'll show you that. This next wire cuts across. Sorry, I bumped the camera. That's part of your evap system. This is one of 2 evap sensors. And then back here on this side, this part of the loom comes up. This is your second part of your evap system. This is your front, or your map sensor on a Subaru. This is your electronic boost control solenoid. And this is your pin for your power steering. All right, what else is there? Nope, that's it for that leg of this electrical wire loom. Let's go back over here. All right, the next little leg is this guy. This is your knock sensor. Let me see, I don't know if you can see down in there. The knock sensor is, you can see the bolt right there. And then this part of the wire loom connects to your electronic throttle body. I have this disconnected because I have to plumb the bypass valve hose that comes in through here. So if we go back up to the main loom, come around, this next branch comes here. This is a fuel injector line. This part of the branch right here is for your AVCS on the driver's side. This line right here is your cam angle sensor on the driver's side. And then this little wire right here is your other injector. And if we go back up, follow this part down, we come down to this junction. One of the most important parts of this wiring loom is this little ground terminal right here. So it grounds to, typically it would ground to the plate that protects this area, but we've removed that. So we're gonna ground it to the TGV, but then we're gonna run a secondary ground, which is this cable here, to the chassis, so that your ECU ground is very, very clean in terms of electrical signal. All right, let's go back up. Here is another sensor that's disconnected. This would be part of your TGV valve, which would bolt right here, or solenoid, sorry. It's disconnected. That will throw a check engine light. And then this is the 2-pin part of your secondary air pump that would bolt right here. This is disconnected. This will throw a check engine light. And then your last line coming around is for your spark plugs on this side, the coil packs. So there you go. Every single electrical connection on a 2009. A Subaru WRX. It's very similar for your 08 to 2014. But let's go over the vacuum lines. So right here we have your balance tube. It's not pinched. It doesn't look great, but it's not pinched. This comes around. It ties into this metal line here, which cuts across, ties into the metal line right here, cuts across, and connects to this valve cover. Let me grab a flashlight so I can show you what's behind all this. There you go. If I where can I put them? There you go. So this is that metal line. It comes around the back here. This is that other metal line. This little S-bend line is how we balance the air pressure between driver and passenger side valve covers, and then the crankcase. So this is your main crankcase balance tube. All right, the next vacuum line in the system is over here. This little guy right here is very important. He's your fuel pressure regulator vacuum signal, and Subaru did a terrible job putting it right here because it sees only vacuum on this one port, and so you get a bit of a fluctuating signal. STIs have it mounted to the main part of the plenum. They get a much cleaner signal. One way that we fix this is when we do the TGV delete, we keep that open center port open. We don't plug the center port, and that allows this to get a slightly cleaner signal for fuel pressure. All right, what else do we have? This is all coolant. We'll come back to that. Over here, obviously, throttle body. This goes straight to your top mount intercooler. This is part of your positive crankcase ventilation system. This would go to the check valve. which would be right here, but it's going to be different with an air oil separator. This is for your bypass valve. This is where it sees the boost pressure. This is for your brake booster. So those are those guys. In here you can see the bypass valve return line. That's where it returns to the intake. All right, this line here comes from your turbo intake pipe. It feeds through this sensor right here, which you could delete this. I can get into that in another video, but it's just kind of part of a neat and tidy system. But this is part of your PCV system. This comes around, does a 90, and this will go to the top of your air oil separator. And then on top of, let's see if I can show you here. On top of, you can't see. Yeah, you can. On top of the turbo intake, you can see that line right there. I don't know how to point to it now. This guy right here, where he makes a little 90, and he goes into the top of the turbo intake, and that's your other line for your air oil separator. All right, let me fish this out of here. Of course, it's magnetized, so it's fighting me. I'd leave it if we weren't coming back to this area. Okay. Alrighty, over here, again, this is your part of your balance tube. This would be one of your vent lines for your air oil separator. There's another one on this side. What other air lines do we have? Obviously the intake for the turbo. And then we got a couple over here we can look at and talk about. So this one is part of your evap system, this front little one. And then the second one, very important, is part of your boost control. So you can kind of see those two vacuum lines there. And then here, this is part of your evap system. So this connects to this bottom one. This top one comes around and connects to this fuel line vent, and then that connects to the other part of your evap system. Let me see if I can show you. There it is there. So that's this line is the first in line there, and then the second line from that evap, how can I show you there? I've got my finger on it. Comes around and it's part of this right there. So that's all your primary vacuum lines, and why Subarus are prone to having vacuum leaks. Now let's go over your coolant lines. Obviously, you've got your radiator lines. These are both coolant lines coming from your water pump. This is part of your coolant system. It cuts across. Coming back here. One of those lines from the front of the engine will cut across the back there, and it will be this metal pipe right here. It's very similar to the balance pipe, but it's a little bit smaller, and it comes up right here. So it's right next to the turbo intake. It's the line that cuts across and is down here. It's the bottom part of your expansion tank that sits right here on the passenger side or the turbo side of the intake manifold. This is a coolant line from the turbo, also part of that expansion tank. Your coolant lines down here, these two would typically have a hose connecting them from one to the other. I think I have a new one right behind me here. There we go. It looks like that. If you're doing it the stock way, that would connect right there. But with the air oil separator, we're going to use these two lines for the catch can so that it's heated. And then I forgot about this line earlier. This is the crank vent for your air oil separator. So that's where that ties in. And then over here, you can see the water lines, one from the water pump down below, and then this bigger one from the crossover pipe on top. This is the bypass for the throttle body. It connects from here around to here. Basically, it's just connecting this line to this line. It would connect from this line to this line through the throttle body, through this port and that port, but we've gone ahead and removed that and bypassed that so that we get a colder throttle body. And then back here, these are all coolant lines. This is the cylinder 4 cooling mod. It's a bit of a bypass. This is the original route, and it would come up and around, and then these two plumb into the firewall for the heater core of the engine. All right. Then the only other really interesting bits, this is the oil feed line for your turbo. And then this down here, let me see if I can show you. That is the drain line back there for the turbo. And then this is where it ties into the head, but it also gives us the drain line for the air oil separator. All right, that is everything. So if there's something you're looking for on an EJ, quite likely covered it. Some of the later models had more of these. They're just little plugs. They just want to know that this is plugged in. Technically, you could have this sensor plugged into this white part with nothing else on it, and it would satisfy the check engine light. So some models have one of these in the middle, one of these on this end, and one of these on this end. Yeah, all right. I think that's everything. This is the whole engine side of things. If we wanted to look quickly at the body wiring harness, let's see. This is for your secondary air pump. This is for your air conditioning. This is your positive off of the top of the alternator. This is your alternator control. Back here, it's hard to see. It's behind here. I've got this in the way. But back there is for your rear O2 sensor and your transmission. And then up here is your mass airflow sensor. And then of course your catch can. This is where the main harness from the body connects to the harness of the engine. So electrically, that covers almost everything. I think the only thing I forgot was these guys, which are used for your fans. And then I didn't do grounding, but yeah, that is electrically everything, vacuum line everything, and coolant line everything. Hope that helps.